What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the world according to Briggs. How about we finish up the states with the decreasing population video? This would be part 2. The first half showed us that New Jersey, Vermont, Mississippi, Connecticut, and the Sportsman's paradise of Louisiana have been experiencing an outward migration for more than a handful of years. All of the states on this list are losing just small fractions of their population, but they are losing where most states in this country are staying even and others are growing. All of the states on this list are losing just a small fraction of their population, but they are losing. Most states in the country are either staying even or actually growing in population. And that's according to the U.S. Census Bureau. There are many reasons a state would have a declining population. Residents have been leaving their home states in search of new opportunities, lower taxes, better real estate markets, a better environment, and the list goes on. On this list, you'll get the number of residents a state lost, and the list is ranked by the percentage of the population that declined. All right, let's see who's chasing out the residents. Here's part 2. Number 5, Hawaii. Hawaii's population has dropped 3 years in a row, and it looks like 2020 is going to make it 4. My first thought was, it's got to be the spam. They eat a lot of spam here. I don't know why. Spam for me growing up was only something you ate when someone forgot to go to the grocery store for like 2 or 3 weeks. The Hawaiian that works for me said, no, Howley, it's not the spam. Spam is good. So I'm going to trust her and say it's not the spam. But things aren't great in paradise for a few reasons. Hawaii lost almost 5,000 residents from July 2018 to July 2019, and that's the latest information from the United States Census Bureau. There's a lot of stats that apply here, but one I found very interesting. The census report said fewer births and more deaths helped drive this stat more than it had in previous decades. One thing that may have helped the birth versus death stat is the teen pregnancy rate. It dropped close to 10% in the last decade. That's a great stat. Keep it up, Aloha State. One study mentioned that Hawaii has a strong labor market and a low unemployment rate. Those are great stats to have. But when you look a little deeper, you find out that the people aren't getting paid in step with inflation and cost of living for where they live. So really, those stats only look good for politicians. They can show you record unemployment numbers and then turn around and say poverty is driven by lazy people. Most of the time, it's an abundance of low-paying jobs, and not many good-paying jobs is what drives the poverty in places. So people are flooding out of the Aloha State because of money and cost of living, really. The percent of the population lost was 0.33% last year alone. Number 4, New York. New York's population has shrunk the last 4 consecutive years. Only one decade had a drop in population since the 1800s when they first started counting, and that was the 1980s. The latest stats by the U.S. Census Bureau shows that New York has a population of 19.5 million people, but it also showed that New York's population dropped by almost 77,000 people in 2018. Some fear that if this trend continues, they could face the possibility of losing a seat in the 2022 redistricting, reducing the representation in Washington, D.C. That could be a big problem. Since 2010, New York has lost a total of 1.4 million residents to other states. The 2018 report found that the largest share were the middle-class workers and high-income earners. You know, the people that pay the most taxes. According to the United Van Line study, those who left New York earned more than $150,000, and only 8.4% of them earned less than $50,000. So why are they leaving? It's the cost of living, crumbling infrastructure, and high tax rates are what most listed when they left. If you live in New York City, you're paying painfully high taxes. The schools, bridges, tunnels, trains, airports, and hospitals are falling apart. Wander around New York City. Look at the amount of homeless that seem to be forgotten by the state. I know they're doing what they can, but they have a mountain of problems they have to get over to help these people. You just always think it should be better. I mean, we got a bad thing here in Portland, Oregon, too, and I know the people that are involved are doing everything they can, but it's still bad. Anyway, these people need help, and the cost of living is making things worse. The politicians running the city feel that it's better to let them live on the street than have them living in a costly facility, you know? They're caught in a rough spot, too. The crime rates are up in most of the state, and the cold weather is rough. My son was stationed at Fort Drum, which is in the northern part of upstate New York, and said the snow would get so high they would have to dig paths from building to building, and if a shorter dude was walking through the path, you wouldn't be able to see him over the snow. That's crazy. The percent of the population New York lost last year alone was 0.40%. Number 3, Illinois. For 6 straight years, the population of Illinois has gone down, and it's the only Midwestern state that didn't grow in 2018. They call it the Great Exodus in Chicago. People are leaving Illinois faster than my kids leave a room when I say who wants to watch a Browns game with me. Most people leaving say that it's the high taxes and unfriendly business environment. There's a whole bunch of other reasons. Some believe it's the underfunded schools, some say it's the overdue infrastructure repairs and improvements that have been put off forever. One thing that's not an opinion is the state lost 157,000 residents over the past 5 years. Over the last decade or so, Illinois has had some hurdles. Loss of manufacturing jobs, declining birth rate like Hawaii, college grads ghosting the state after graduation, high cost of living in Chicago and other metro areas, housing costs are crazy, and the lure of warmer states. Yes, I use the word lure. Between 2017 and 2018, 114 more residents left Illinois than moved in from other states. A majority of those who left went to Florida, Texas, and Arizona, the Census Bureau shows. One other thing that a lot of the Illinois residents complain about, and one of their reasons to leave, is corruption. This is something that Illinois is known for, especially Chicago. Corruption has been just part of this state's history in a big way. I mean, every state has corruption. Every city has some form of corruption. It's almost like the politicians in this state are trying to outdo each other. Like they're in a competition for who's the sleaziest. They get busted all the time, too. There always seems to be some form of corruption case going on in Illinois. Chicago mostly, but in Illinois in general. Knowing your politicians are lining their own pockets sting a little bit more when you live in a state that has some of the highest taxes in the country. This is how bad Illinois' taxes are. They share the 4th worst spot in taxes with California. Who let that happen? The cost of living is already bad enough in the prairie state. Then you want to throw in some heavy taxes on people? Yeah, I'm not surprised people are moving out of this state in droves. Number 2, Alaska. The last frontier state has been a loser of people for 5 straight years. Alaska's a little weird for this list. They didn't lose a terrible amount of people, but Alaska's ranked 48th in population, so they don't have many people to lose. Not many people realize that because Alaska's so large. Alaska's the largest state by area. In the past 5 years, Alaska has lost more people than it gained, and this is the longest stretch of population loss since the 1940s. About 30,000 more people have put Alaska in their rearview mirror in that time frame. In the 1950s and 60s, the last frontier state almost doubled its population each decade. During the 1970s, 80s, and 90s census, the state added around 30% in each of those decades. But about the time we realized Y2K was a big fat juicy nothing burger, the state kind of lost its appeal. The 2000 and 2010 census only saw a 14% and a 13% increase. So it was kind of slowing down. And it looks like 2020's really slowing down because they could actually go into the negative. They had a couple good years in the 2010s, but yeah, they've been losing pretty good other than those couple years. Most people leaving Alaska are heading to Washington, Oregon, and California. Many of those people fleeing the state are young people looking for jobs, starting colleges, and just wanting a better place to live, in their opinion. But older people are increasingly leaving Alaska too, especially residents over the age of 50. It used to be a hot spot for the outdoorsy retired folks, but these days, not so much. These days they're making their way out of Alaska's cold weather and into the warmer sunblock-wearing states like Texas and Florida. The population loss last year alone was 3,500 people, which is 0.49% of their population. And number 1. West Virginia. When you look at the percentage of its total population, no state suffered more losses last year than West Virginia. Its population has declined 7 straight years. In that time, they have lost almost 4% of the population. For a lot of things, 4% isn't much. But in population stats, 4% over 7 years is a big deal. Those 0.25% and 0.5% that we've had in this list, those are big. But 4% over 7 years is really bad. When most states are adding 10, 20, maybe even 30% to their population over a decade, and your state is in any amount in the negative, it shows things are not right in your state. West Virginia is an amazing state in a lot of ways. The mountain state has some of the best landscapes in the country. Charleston is a great city, and it's hard to find better people on this planet. They've just been hit with 2 major sucker punches in the last decade or so that have driven the residents away from this wonderful state and made most people second guess making West Virginia their new home. West Virginia was ground zero for the opioid crisis for a handful of years, and it was bad, Really bad. They've made some progress, but like most states, it continues to be a problem. And then you have the decline of the coal industry. This has put many West Virginians out of work for a lot of years now. So many of them have left the state looking for work. The Mountain State has a really low cost of living, but if you can't find work and you have no income, it really doesn't matter. You gotta go find work. If you can work remotely, this is probably the best state to buy a home. Land is cheap, relatively speaking, low cost of living, and they have internet there. Why not? In 2018, West Virginia lost over 12,000 residents, which is about 0.67% of its population. Alright, so that is our final part to the top 10 states with decreasing populations video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. You know, even though West Virginia was number 1 on this list, it's worth taking a look at if you can work remotely. I've thought about it many times. Anyway, don't forget all the links below. If you like what we're doing here, feel free to subscribe. We always welcome new subscribers. Give the video a big thumbs up if you like the video. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.